The following essay by Chris Rurik is released in conjunction with Green Iscariot, an exhibition of paintings by Emma Webster at Alexander Berggruen in New York. Green Iscariot opens September 8th and runs until October 14th, 2021.
You cannot stand in the middle of this. Sight with no sound, sound with no sight, like being out at night. I'm sweeping a brush line I thought I knew with a failing headlight, trying to find a singing insect. Leaves swing their shadows like swords, and branches touch my brow. A single thin stridulation repeats, sweet and hypnotic, uncanny. Neither comforting nor discomforting, striking a part of my skull beneath all the apparatus I have to judge it with. I do not want to meet its maker. I must meet its maker. I do this. I enter realms around me I do not know. People think that as a naturalist I must feel quite at ease in the wild. That can be true, but here I am, no farther than my backyard, ears ringing, and my skin radiates with uncertainty. The beast, when I finally see it, sits canted on a twig. It has barbed legs, translucent green, diaphanous wings, every vein illuminated by my light. From its slanted face sprout antennae longer than its body, more thin than monofilament line. It continues to sing. I am locked in place beside it. I know it's a tree cricket of some sort, but that's the only whimper of an explanation my training can put up against the electric wariness that pretty much levitates me in this moment of encounter. I live to find these creatures that ask nothing, tell nothing. Later I won't even be able to decide if it is beautiful or savage, and in their inscrutability reveal just how much of our perception of the world is preconditioned, how dependent we are upon our scripts. When we do not pre-know the beast, we must read it exactly as it appears before us, and we are poor readers. Our flesh is mercilessly exposed. Some version of skin crawling is the description I most often hear slapped onto insects. Immediately after that, people want to know if an insect is a bad guy or a good guy. The rare, closer description is inevitably riddled with words that whisper, "Language is knowledge is power." It establishes boundaries, maintains control over the storyline. In a moment of inscrutable encounter, when, let's say, the political script falters or a pandemic slips loose or we realize that there are other beings sharing real space with us, killing these trees will the fire spread, we experience a radiant kindredness with the physical world around us. Or, more familiarly, a wild sense of being lost in oceanic waves at night. No photographs have circumscribed what we will experience. Many of these creatures have no common names. Life has its own dark magic waiting to shuck us like oysters. There is a state of sense-making that is illegible, but free of illusion. To me, that's the feel of Emma Webster's paintings, being dropped at dusk into a strange hollow, with trees twisting all around, bodies, streaks of color contouring muscles you had not suspected. It is a sense of stirring up ghosts, or stepping among survivors, future survivors. Rivers are whorls, vistas tangled in limbs with carved appendages. Leaves are as round and ready as fruits. If the shock of encounter can be outlasted, acclimated, such scenes are rich fields for an imaginative roam, or a knowing that crawls across the skin. Landscape painting has never been a means of making facsimiles of the natural world. It's all script, a staging of settings just like it's done in novels and plays, where carefully cast light throws certain details into relief, the better to accentuate the human drama to come. It is a means of contouring our real-world experience of place, casting mood through environmental cues, convincing us that scenery is background. Well, not even background necessarily. It preconditions us to react to any movement, any bear in the bushes according to script, to raise our guns. What if landscapes were painted as models? Emma Webster is known for creating dioramas and virtual realities from which to paint, but another sense of modeling applies here. Models as formulae from which knowledge of the future is drawn. Weather models, climate change models, are best ways of simulating how disasters will unfold, how species will move or go extinct if there will be enough water. Might landscape paintings act as oracles? Might they draw their illumination not from self-protecting mythologies, but from shifting inhumanities? And might they strike us not with the God's eye view of maps and probabilities, like the models that we have been taught to trust, but with something that throws us into encounter with tree crickets in the future? The map is not the territory, said Alfred Korsybski, and Marianne Moore exhorts us to be literalists of the imagination, to have toads in our imaginary gardens. So how might future impressionisms look? Just as the unknown is a presence in all my perambulations, all my encounters, it is a presence in all predictions. Webster explores the movement of forces through dramatized and partially denuded scenes, provinces of inscrutability, creating still lifes of events such as clouds and fires that will play out no matter how we react to them. And we're within them. Leaves glisten, silver-sided, and the thicket's negative space has as much heft as its limbs. Here, close attention to constituent parts does not lead us into the loneliness of scientific reductionism, for each part is twisting into something else, unfolding like my awareness of what sits in the night. Shadows here are like spiders, linking the world with the underworld with thick threads, and what awaits us is awash in our own pollutions. What we have wrought still will not belong to us. In paintings, it is possible to experience time-scale shifts, divergences of light, and multiple points of view at once. This is not an artistic flight of fancy. This is the reality of a world filled with a multiplicity of beings. The path of the invisible is sensed and sculpted. A world in flux becomes animated. Light and shadow move through each other like fish in eelgrass, touched by waves. Look up at the trees. They move. Once, while watching Webster paint, I got disoriented, then almost offended when she freely spread new color over swaths of the painting I had been watching her create for hours. Much disappeared while she followed the emergence of the image. There will be new patterns of trees and shrubs, new strikes of light in denuded lands, new insects, great shifts in who lives where. But it's not merely the arrangement of beings that will change, but the ways of moving, the manner of phenomena, the formation and dissolution of our surroundings. Avon Boland, from her poem An Old Steel Engraving.
We have found the country of our malediction, where nothing can move until we find the word, nothing can stir until we say, this is what happened, and is happening, and history is one of us who turns away, while the other is turning the page.
Another night, I hear another insect singing. Again, the hypnosis draws me outside. The song is scratchier, less sweet than the tree crickets. The beast, when I find it, is totally unknown to me. I bend close, heart beating, not knowing what to expect. It is a fat, tan katydid of some kind with a black mask. A shieldback katydid, I will later learn. It has a scimitar of an ovipositor curving up behind cocked legs. It bends a single antenna toward me and continues to sing. In the morning, it is gone. These encounters reveal the absurdity of our prescriptions for how the world ought to support us. Solidity, protection, illumination, these are our values. The tree cricket looks like it could be snapped by a falling twig, and yet here it is. Marianne Moore, from her poem, A Grave.
It is human nature to stand in the middle of a thing, but you cannot stand in the middle of this.
This is a single living cricket, not a cricket with a capital C. It disorients us to think that such a being can survive on its own in a world in which certainty is constantly eroding. Vulnerability is the hallmark of the future. We feel intensely exposed when we are not in the center, for we can be crushed as nothing more than a side effect. Yet vulnerability offers something that might have more value than control, and that's kinship. I laugh when I think of how the tree cricket noise is now used. If no one knows what to say, crickets. Yes, in our awkward pauses, the non-human world sings on, recognizing awkwardness only as a blessed relief from speech. Diversity of life is precarity sublimated into resilience. Look at the trees in Webster's paintings. Their reach has a roping, water-like movement, an up-spiraling like that of the whole chestnut in the overstory. Here we are called into the politics of interconnectivity. These trees are no silent ranks of soldiers. They are individuals. With a sense of alien intention, they react to the spaces opened around them. As individuals they grow, and as individuals they may burst into flame. Sarahs went to hell with no sense of time, wrote Avon Boland, calling out the agricultural goddess's final glimpses of a beloved landscape with, quote, the diligence of rivers always at one level, wheat at one height, leaves of a single color, the same distance in the usual light, end quote, as an impossibility. Must we make our own journey to hell alone, stripped of time? Webster says that these days, the most important tool in her studio is her stool. Her art of creation involves poring over her landscapes for hours and days with a patience for shifting conditions, and in doing so, she mimics the slowness of building relationships with the more than human. Self-marginalizing takes time, as does catching on to the slow shift of ecosystems. It may still result in models and myths. There is no other way, Boland wrote of the task of creating an accurate inscription of the entangled flesh and history she needed to follow in Sarris's footsteps. Quote, myth is the wound we leave in the time we have, end quote. Yet it is an experience of the future that refuses to deny the individuality of others. In substituting sculptural bodies for digestible symbologies, Webster avoids the trap of creating automatons of beings and restores to us a comradeship with everything that will always be foreign and strange and uplifting. Such comradeship calls forth our own precious precarity. Who knows? We might even drop our poor scripts to follow the lead of the nameless beings that surround us. Until then, according to Marianne Moore in Smooth Gnarled Cape Myrtle,
a Rosalindless redbird comes where people are, knowing they have not made a point of being where he is. This bird which says, not sings. Without loneliness I should be more lonely, so I keep it.
About the author. Naturalist and writer Chris Rurik hails from the Key Peninsula, Washington, where he lives on a fourth-generation family farm and works on issues of landscape, memory, conservation, and education. He is interested in non-human perspectives, particularly in juxtaposition with the lability of human perceptual reality. He holds bachelor's from Stanford University in creative writing and geology, and has been involved with several nature centers, the National Park Service, the Prince William Sound Science Center, and the Rocky Mountain Land Library. His latest work can be found each month in the Key Peninsula News. This essay was narrated by the author, Chris Rurik. Sound design, music, and editing by Jonathan Apgar. This essay was made possible by the Alexander Berggruen Gallery, and this audio was produced by Emma Webster. All rights reserved.